My name is Victoria. I'm 25 years old. For as long as I can remember, my parents treated my achievements like background noise, while my cousin's life was the main event. I kept telling myself they just showed love differently. But the moment that finally made the truth impossible to ignore came on the day of my medical school graduation. I stood in my cap and gown, staring at my phone in an auditorium of 200 cheering people. They had skipped my ceremony to attend my cousin's engagement party. "It's just a piece of paper," my mother texted. "Don't be jealous." All around me, families were hugging their kids, handing them bouquets, crying tears of pride. My hands just gripped the plastic chair in front of me. Every milestone ignored, every sacrifice dismissed. I worked twice as hard. She got twice the applause. I thought I just hadn't earned their respect yet. I was wrong. What my mother had no idea about as she raised a glass across town was that my piece of paper came with a $162,000 fellowship I had secured in complete secret. And when I dropped my first paycheck stub into the 40-person family group chat, it didn't just stop the party, it tore open decades of lies and proved exactly how fast their loyalty could be bought. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. The system didn't break overnight. It had been running like a well-oiled machine for 25 years. In my family, there is a very specific currency, and I was the only one who didn't seem to have the right coins. My cousin, Chloe, is 2 years older than me. Growing up, our lives were constantly held up against each other like two different fabrics. Chloe was the silk, delicate, expensive, and always needing special care. I was the denim. I was expected to hold up, to be scrubbed hard, and to never show a tear. The dynamic was simple. Chloe had potential, and I had responsibilities. 3 months before my graduation, we were all at my parents' house for a Sunday dinner. It was the kind of afternoon where the tension is so thick you can practically see it simmering over the roast beef. My father was at the head of the table, his checkbook already out before the plates were cleared. "The lease on the boutique space fell through," my mother said, her voice dripping with that staged, tragic sympathy she reserved only for Chloe. "Poor Chloe is just devastated. She put so much heart into those sketches." Chloe sat across from me, dabbing at her eyes with a linen napkin. This was her third boutique attempt in 4 years. The first was a candle line that never made it past the garage. The second was a life coaching service for pets. Thousands of my father's dollars had vanished into each one. "It's just a setback, honey," my father said, scribbling a number on a check and sliding it across the tablecloth. "We believe in your vision." I sat there, cutting my meat into tiny, precise squares. I had just finished a 36-hour shift at the hospital. My eyes were bloodshot, and my hands were still slightly shaky from the caffeine. I had funded my entire medical school journey through a mix of grueling graveyard shifts, scholarships, and loans that felt like a secondary heartbeat. "I have my final placement evaluations this week," I said quietly, trying to bridge the gap. "If they go well, I'll be on track for the residency honors." My mother didn't even look up from her wine. "That's nice, Victoria. You've always been so self-sufficient. You don't really need the coddling like Chloe does. She has a sensitive soul. It's a lot harder for her to navigate the world than it is for someone as sturdy as you." Sturdy. That was the word. To them, I wasn't a daughter achieving something monumental. I was a piece of furniture that didn't need polishing. A few days later, I was back in the hospital, standing in the hallway of the surgical wing. I was staring at a vending machine, wondering if I had enough mental energy to choose between pretzels and a granola bar. "You're overthinking the snacks, Victoria. That's a sign of clinical exhaustion." I turned around to see Dr. Eris. She's a senior attending, the kind of doctor who can command a room without raising her voice. She had been watching me for months. She knew I was the first one in and the last one out. She also knew I never had anyone meeting me in the lobby with flowers after a successful procedure. "I'm fine, Dr. Eris," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a long week." She stepped closer, her expression softening. "I've seen your work on the floor. You have a steadiness that can't be taught. You earned your seat at the table. Don't let anyone make you feel small just because they don't understand the work it took to get there." I didn't know what to say. It was the first time in years someone had acknowledged the weight I was carrying without telling me it was my job to carry it. "Follow me," she said. We walked back to the break room. It was empty, smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. She reached into her locker and pulled out a small, heavy box. She handed it to me. "I know graduation is coming up," she said. "Consider this an early gift from the team." I opened the box. Inside was a high-quality, professional-grade stethoscope. Engraved on the side in clean, silver script was Victoria Miller, MD. I felt a lump form in my throat. I looked at the engraving for a long time. It was the first thing I owned that had my new title on it. It felt real. For a second, I allowed myself to believe that once my parents saw me walk across that stage, once they saw the MD next to my name, the sturdy label would finally drop away. I thought the achievement would be the bridge back to them. I was wrong. That night, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from my mother. I expected it to be about my graduation ceremony, which was now only 48 hours away. I had sent them the invitation 3 months ago. I had sent them the parking pass last week. "V, don't forget, we need to be at the country club by 10:00 a.m. on Saturday for Chloe's big announcement. Dress nice. No scrubs. Saturday at 10:00 a.m. That was the exact time my name was scheduled to be called in the university auditorium. They weren't even pretending to forget. I stared at the screen until the light dimmed and went black. I realized then that I wasn't fighting for a seat at their table. I was fighting for a seat in a room they had already locked me out of. I didn't reply. I just put the phone face down and went back to work. The morning of graduation was gray and humid. I woke up at 5:00 a.m., not because I was excited, but because my body was still on hospital time. I made a pot of coffee and sat by the window of my studio apartment, looking at my black graduation gown hanging on the back of the door. I checked my phone one last time. No missed calls. No good luck texts. There was just a notification from the family group chat where my aunt was posting photos of the floral arrangements for Chloe's engagement brunch. I drove to the university alone. The parking lot was a sea of SUVs and minivans, families spilling out of them with balloons and oversized cameras. I saw a father lifting his daughter up so she wouldn't trip on her hem. I saw a mother frantically pinning a corsage to a young man's lapel while he laughed. I walked into the arena and found my place in the line of students. The air smelled like floor wax and expensive perfume. My seat was in the third row. I looked back at the section reserved for families. Rows C and D, seats 12 and 13. I had paid extra to ensure they were aisle seats so my father wouldn't feel cramped. They remained empty. The ceremony started with a brass fanfare that made my chest ache. As the speeches began, I kept my eyes fixed on those two empty chairs. I told myself there was traffic. I told myself my mother had a migraine. I told myself they were just running late because they'd stopped to buy a massive bouquet. Then my phone buzzed in my lap. I shielded the screen with my hand. It was a photo from my mother. It showed a long, white-clothed table overlooking the golf course. My father was holding a champagne flute, laughing at something Chloe's fiancé was saying. Chloe was in the center, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first year of textbooks. "It's just a piece of paper, Victoria," the text underneath read. "We're at Chloe's engagement party, don't be jealous. We'll do a celebratory dinner for you next month when things quiet down. Enjoy your day. The word jealous felt like a physical blow. It wasn't about envy. It was about the fact that I had spent 4 years studying until my eyes bled, and they couldn't give me 2 hours of their time. I looked at the empty seats again. A woman in a sun hat sat down in one of them, thinking it was unclaimed. She didn't know those seats were a debt that was never going to be paid. Victoria Miller. The girl next to me nudged my elbow. I realized the line was moving. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I walked toward the stage. My name was called. I shook the dean's hand. I took the scroll. There was applause, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. I scanned the crowd one last time, a tiny, pathetic part of me still hoping to see my father's bald head or my mother's bright red coat. Nothing. I walked off the other side of the stage and kept walking. I didn't stop to take photos with my classmates. I didn't go to the reception for cake and punch. I went straight to my car, took off the gown, and threw it in the back seat. I drove to the hospital. Not because I had a shift, but because I didn't know where else to go. I went to the administrative office and asked for the final paperwork for my residency. "You're here on graduation day?" the clerk asked, looking up from her computer. "I just want to get it finished," I said. I signed 3 different documents. I updated my direct deposit information. I felt a strange, cold shift inside me. For years, I had let them handle my emergency contact info. I crossed out my father's name and wrote Dr. Eris. It was the first time I had ever intentionally excluded them from my professional life. It felt like cutting a wire. I knew if I stayed in their narrative, I would always be the sturdy girl who didn't need anything. I was done being sturdy for people who wouldn't even park a car for me. That was the first real crack. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was starting to build a wall. I went home, took my diploma out of the leatherette tube and set it on the kitchen counter next to a pile of unpaid lab fees. My phone buzzed again. Another photo of Chloe, this time showing off a 5-carat diamond. I didn't look at the ring. I looked at my father's hand in the background, the one that usually signed my birthday cards with "Best Dad." He was holding a toast list. He had chosen his role for the day, and it wasn't being my father. I blocked my mother's notifications for 24 hours. It was a small move, but for me, it was a revolution. The fallout started that evening. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the diploma on the counter when my phone vibrated so hard it skidded across the granite. It was my father. I took a breath and answered, thinking maybe the alcohol from the brunch had worn off and the guilt had finally set in. "Why aren't you answering your mother?" he started. No hello. No congratulations. Just a demand. "I've been busy, Dad. Today was my graduation, remember?" "We know what today was, Victoria. Your mother sent you a perfectly nice message explaining why we couldn't make it. Chloe's engagement is a family milestone. You being difficult about it is ruinous for everyone's mood." Ruinous? I felt a cold laugh bubble up. I graduated from medical school. I'm a doctor now. That used to mean something in this family. "It does mean something," he snapped, but I heard the phone being snatched away. Then came my mother's voice, sharp and high-pitched. "You are being incredibly selfish, Victoria. Typical narcissistic behavior. You know how hard Chloe has worked to find someone who loves her, and you're trying to make her special week all about your piece of paper. Do you have any idea how much pressure your father is under to fund this wedding? We are stressed, and you're adding to it because you didn't get a gold star and a pat on the head." "It wasn't a gold star, Mom. It was 4 years of my life." "Stop it," she hissed. "I want you to text Chloe right now and apologize. She saw that you didn't like her engagement photo and she's been crying for an hour. She thinks you hate her. You're ruining her moment with your jealousy." "I'm not apologizing for graduating," I said. My voice was trembling, but I kept it low. "Then don't expect to be part of this family's celebrations," she said. "If you can't be a team player, you don't get to play. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us. by throwing a tantrum on Chloe's big day. She hung up before I could point out that they hadn't given me a dime for school. They hadn't even given me a ride to the airport when I moved for my rotations. A minute later, a notification popped up. You have been removed from the Miller family group by Diane Miller. I sat in the silence of my kitchen. I had been put in a timeout at 25 years old for the crime of achieving something they couldn't take credit for. The punishment was direct. It wasn't just the chat. Within an hour, my father had logged into the shared family cellular plan and suspended my line. My screen went to SOS only. It was a classic move of theirs. Remind me who holds the power by cutting off my connection to the world. Then came the email. My father had been a co-signer on my undergraduate apartment lease from years ago, a vestige I hadn't cleared yet. He had sent a formal notice to the old landlord withdrawing his name, effective immediately, which triggered an automated alert to my current credit monitoring service. He was trying to tank my credit score right as I was looking to move closer to the hospital for my fellowship. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was a coordinated strike. They were punishing my defiance by trying to strip away my stability. They wanted me to crawl back, apologize to Chloe, and admit that my career was secondary to her social calendar. I looked at the SOS at the top of my phone. I didn't call them from a landline. I didn't beg. I walked down to the local mobile store, opened my own independent account, and got a new number. I paid the deposit with the last of my savings. When the clerk asked if I wanted to port my old number over, I looked at the Miller family plan details on the screen. No, I said. Give me a completely new one. I want a fresh start. That was the first thing I truly lost, the tie to the life they had built for me. I was officially on my own, disconnected from the people who were supposed to be my safety net. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful yet. It felt like a vacuum, sucking the air out of the room. I was a doctor, but I was also a ghost. The silence of my apartment became my only companion for the next few days. It was a heavy, ringing silence. I kept the lights low. I didn't want to see the stack of medical journals or the stethoscope Dr. Eris had given me. They felt like relics from a life that had cost me everything and given me back a void. I spent most of my time on the floor of my living room. There's something about the floor, it's the lowest you can go, and there's a strange security in knowing you can't fall any further. I had no phone service, no family, and according to my mother, no soul. I was just a woman with a piece of paper and a mounting pile of debt. On Tuesday, I reached my limit. I had been eating cereal for 3 days straight because I was too exhausted to grocery shop. I looked at my diploma, still sitting on the counter. I picked it up and walked to the closet, intending to shove it into a box at the very back. I didn't want to look at the MD anymore. It felt like a scar. But as I reached for the box, I saw the framed photo I had packed away earlier, the one of my parents smiling at me when I got into med school. I realized they weren't smiling at my potential. They were smiling because they thought a doctor in the family would look good on their Christmas cards. I didn't put the diploma in the box. I put the photo in instead. I shoved it deep under a pile of old winter coats and slammed the door. I went to the kitchen, cleared the counter, and sat down with my diploma. I ordered the most expensive Thai takeout in the neighborhood. When it arrived, I didn't eat it at the table. I sat right there on the hardwood floor, the steam from the noodles hitting my face. It was the first time I felt like I could breathe. There was no one telling me I was selfish. No one telling me Chloe needed the air more than I did. The silence wasn't a vacuum anymore, it was a buffer. I was alone, but for the first time in 25 years, I wasn't being diminished. I was just Victoria, and that had to be enough. A small chime came from my laptop on the coffee table. I hadn't checked my email in 48 hours. I crawled over and opened it. The subject line was, Urgent. Fellowship Committee Decision, Miller, Victoria. I felt a cold prickle of fear. If I lost the fellowship, I was truly sunk. I clicked it open with shaking fingers. Dear Dr. Miller, we are pleased to inform you that your application for the Advanced Research Fellowship has been moved to the final stage of approval. We would like to schedule a formal meeting with the Director of Medicine to discuss your starting package and the allocated research grant. I leaned my head against the cool screen. The grant was huge. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. It was a lifeline thrown into a dark sea. The floor didn't feel so hard anymore. I realized that while my parents were busy trying to cut my phone line, the world was waiting to hear what I had to say. I wasn't a failure. I was an investment. That was the small light. It wasn't a roar, it was a flicker. But in a dark room, a flicker is everything. The silence from the group chat didn't last. A few days later, my mother added me back. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the time out, and certainly no mention of my graduation. Instead, the chat was a flood of floral arrangements, seating charts, and panicked messages about the wedding of the decade. Aunt Susan reached out to me privately first. Your mom said you had a bit of a meltdown over the engagement brunch, her text read. I know med school is stressful, Victoria, but you shouldn't take it out on Chloe. Just be the bigger person and apologize so we can all move on. Life is too short for these little dramas. It was a classic contagion. My mother had already poisoned the well, framing my absence as a jealous fit rather than a scheduled milestone. The following Sunday was the mandatory family brunch. My mother had texted the group, everyone at the house at 11:00. No excuses, we need to finalize the guest list. I didn't want to go, but I knew that if I stayed away, the narrative would solidify. I needed to see what I was dealing with. When I walked into my parents' dining room, the change in atmosphere was instant. The room was loud with the clinking of silverware and the high-pitched hum of my aunts gossiping. As soon as I crossed the threshold, the volume dropped by half. My Uncle Mark was the first to approach. He didn't ask about my degree or my new title. He just patted my shoulder with a look of heavy, misplaced pity. We all grow at our own pace, kid, he said. Don't let Chloe's success get you down. Your time will come. He said it like I was a high school dropout, not a licensed physician. I looked around the room. My cousins were avoiding eye contact. My mother was holding court at the end of the table, her voice cutting through the remaining noise. It's just been such a transition, my mother said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Dealing with so much jealousy in the family is exhausting. Some people just can't handle it when the spotlight isn't on them. It's a character flaw, really. She looked directly at me as she said it. No one defended me. No one pointed out that I had been at my own graduation. They just nodded and reached for more mimosas. They had already accepted the lie. I was the bitter, failing daughter and Chloe was the star. I sat at the far end of the table next to the oscillating fan. I was a guest in a house I grew up in, watching a play where I was the villain. The arrival scene reached its peak when Chloe stood up to make an announcement. She looked radiant, draped in expensive fabrics my father had paid for. So, Chloe said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. We found the perfect venue, the estate at Oak Ridge, but we're a little short, about $10,000 short for the deposit. The room went quiet. Chloe didn't look at the aunts, she didn't look at her fiancé, she looked directly at my parents. We just want it to be perfect, she whispered. But I know everyone is struggling. My mother sighed dramatically. We'll find a way, honey. Family supports family, even if some of us have to make sacrifices to make up for the ones who don't contribute. She looked at me again. The implication was a physical weight. They were going to pay for Chloe's dream wedding, and they were going to use my selfishness as the excuse for why things were tight. I felt a strange, cold clarity. They didn't just want me to be small, they needed me to be the reason for their problems. I'm sure Victoria can help out a bit, my mother added, leaning forward. Since you're single and don't have a real life yet, surely you've saved something from those little hospital shifts. I didn't blink. I didn't argue. I just watched her. I'll have to check my balance, I said quietly. That was the move. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes. I just let them believe I was still under their thumb. The hospital cafeteria at 6:00 a.m. is a lonely place. It smells like burnt beans and floor stripper. I was sitting at a corner table, staring into a black coffee I didn't want, when a shadow fell over the tray. You look like you're mourning a patient who hasn't died yet, Dr. Eris said. She sat down across from me without asking. I didn't try to hide it. I told her everything: the empty chairs at graduation, the text about the piece of paper, the family brunch where I was treated like a charity case, and the $10,000 demand for a wedding I wasn't even sure I'd be invited to. She listened with a stillness that was unnerving. She didn't offer platitudes. She didn't say, "But they're your parents." "Victoria," she said, leaning forward, "there are people who build houses out of ego, and they expect you to be the foundation. But foundations are buried. They stay in the dark so the house can look pretty. Is that what you want?" "No," I said, "but they're all I have." "No," she countered, her voice sharp. "They are all you had. Look at me." I looked up. "The fellowship funding cleared this morning," she said. She pulled a manila folder from her bag and slid it across the table. "It's not just a research position. It's a prestigious national grant fellowship. It comes with a $162,000 annual stipend and a $25,000 signing bonus for immediate relocation and equipment." I stared at the numbers. $162,000. In my world, that wasn't just money. That was oxygen. It was the ability to walk away from my father's emergency checkbook. It was the end of being sturdy for free. "Family is who shows up for you," Dr. Eris said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her grip firm and real. "Welcome to the real team, Dr. Miller. We look after our own." The warmth of that handshake stayed with me all day. It was different from my mother's performative hugs. This was professional respect. This was a seat at the table I had actually built. Dr. Eris didn't stop there. She walked me down to the HR office and introduced me to the head of contracts. She helped me negotiate the disbursement of the signing bonus so it would hit my account by Friday. She knew I needed the win. "Don't tell them," she whispered as we walked out of the office. "Not yet. Let them keep playing their game. You just focus on yours." I went back to the ward and worked a 12-hour shift. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from my life. I felt like I was gathering strength. I was no longer a victim of their narrative. I was a secret they hadn't discovered yet. That evening, the family chat was still buzzing. My mother had posted a photo of the wedding contribution tracker she'd made on a whiteboard. My name was at the bottom with a big red question mark next to it. "Still waiting on Victoria's heart to grow 3 sizes," she joked. I didn't feel the sting. I just checked my bank app. The pending notification for the $25,000 was already there. The ally had activated. The plan was in motion. I wasn't just a doctor, I was a woman with options. On Friday morning, I opened my banking app while sitting in the hospital parking lot. The $25,000 signing bonus was no longer pending. It was there. The balance sat in my account, a 5-digit wall between me and the family that thought I was drowning. I didn't feel the urge to call them. I didn't feel the urge to brag. I just felt a quiet, heavy sense of relief. Then the formal contract for the fellowship arrived in my inbox. I read through the terms one more time. $162,000 a year for 3 years. It was guaranteed. It was ironclad. Most importantly, it was entirely independent of any family assistance. I was no longer a person who could be threatened with a suspended cell phone line or a withdrawn lease co-signature. The leverage was confirmed. It wasn't just a possibility, It was a physical reality sitting in a database. Meanwhile, the 40-person family group chat was descending into a different kind of reality. My mother had started a crowdfunding for Chloe campaign. The messages were coming in every 20 minutes. "We're so close to the deposit for the estate," my mother posted, followed by a series of crying emojis. "It's so beautiful to see everyone coming together, except for some who still haven't stepped up. It's a shame when personal ego stops us from supporting the people we love." My phone buzzed with a direct message. It was from my mother. "Victoria, I'm serious. Since you're single and have no real expenses, and you're just doing those little residency shifts, your father and I have decided you are expected to contribute $500 to the wedding fund by Sunday. It's the least you can do after the scene you caused at brunch. Consider it your ticket back into the family's good graces." I stared at the message. Ticket back. She didn't even realize she was trying to sell me a seat at a table I had already left. She thought she was holding the keys. She had no idea I had built a whole new house while she was busy counting Chloe's napkins. I opened my laptop and took a clean, high-resolution screenshot of my fellowship acceptance letter. I took another of the paycheck stub showing the signing bonus and the projected annual salary. I didn't crop them. I didn't edit them. I wanted every detail visible: the hospital logo, the Dr. Miller salutation, and the undeniable string of zeros. I saved the images into a folder labeled Clarity. I wasn't reactive anymore. When I was younger, I would have spent an hour crafting a long, emotional text explaining why this was unfair. I would have cried. I would have begged for them to see my side. Now, I just felt a cold, professional distance. I was a doctor reviewing a chart. The diagnosis was clear. The family system was toxic and beyond repair. The only question left was how to deliver the news. I didn't reply to her text. I didn't send the $500. I just closed the app and walked into the hospital to start my shift. I had lives to save. Chloe's flower arrangements could wait. The countdown didn't happen in a war room. It happened in the quiet gaps between my rounds at the hospital. While I was checking vitals and updating patient charts, the family group chat was spinning into a frenzy of artificial urgency. My mother had set a final deadline. Sunday, 6:00 p.m. That was the cutoff for wedding contributions to ensure the deposit for the estate venue. The false confidence from the other side was staggering. On Saturday, my mother posted a photo of Chloe at a high-end bridal boutique. Chloe was draped in ivory lace, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "The dress of dreams for our golden girl. We're pushing our budget to the limit to make this happen, but seeing her smile is worth every sacrifice. Still waiting on a few people to remember what family loyalty looks like." I was sitting in the hospital break room when I saw it. I had just come off a 12-hour shift. My scrubs were wrinkled and my hair was a mess. I looked at the photo of Chloe's sacrifice and then looked at my own hands. They were steady. A few hours later, a second beat of confidence hit the chat. My father posted a screenshot of the venue's booking confirmation page. "Deposit goes in tomorrow at 6. We don't leave family behind, even when they're struggling to keep up. We've got you covered, Chloe." He was grandstanding. He wanted everyone in the 40-person chat to see him as the provider, the benevolent patriarch holding everything together despite his difficult daughter. He was still playing the role of the man who could fix anything with a check, unaware that the check he was counting on me for, the $500 he demanded to keep the peace, was never coming. I spent my Saturday evening with Dr. Eris. We weren't talking about my family. We were looking at my new lab assignments. "Are you ready?" she asked as I packed my bag to head home. "I've been ready for years," I said. "I just didn't have the paperwork until now." I went home and did my final preparations. I didn't write a long speech. I didn't prepare a list of grievances. I simply opened my banking app and verified that the direct deposit from the hospital had cleared. The balance was beautiful. It was a number that represented my independence, my hard work, and my future. I downloaded the PDF of my fellowship contract. I took a fresh screenshot of my account balance. I felt no anger, just a cold, clinical sense of inevitability. On Sunday morning, the chat was a barrage of reminders. 4 hours to go, my mother posted. 2 hours to go. Let's show Chloe we're all in this together. At 5:00 p.m., my mother sent me one final private text. Victoria, this is your last chance. Send the money now or don't bother coming to Sunday dinner ever again. Your father is furious. Don't be the reason Chloe loses her dream venue. I didn't answer. I watched the clock. I thought about all the times I had apologized for things I didn't do. All the times I had stayed silent while they praised Chloe's vision and ignored my reality. All the times I had been the sturdy ones so they could be the sensitive ones. The clock hit 5:55 p.m. My heart wasn't racing. I felt like I was back in the oar, focused and calm. I opened the 40-person family group chat. I saw the final guilt trip post from my mother. The deadline is here. It's sad to see who truly values this family and who only cares about themselves. We're moving forward without the selfish ones. I hovered my thumb over the attachment icon. The silence in my apartment was absolute. For the first time, I wasn't the one waiting for them to call. They were the ones about to get an answer they never expected. I didn't hesitate. I tapped the attachment icon and selected the two files: the high-resolution scan of my $162,000 fellowship contract and the screenshot of my bank balance showing the $25,000 signing bonus. I typed one sentence. Since my MD is just a piece of paper, I guess I'll keep the money it prints. Good luck funding the wedding. I hit send. The chat went from a storm of activity to a graveyard. For 10 minutes, the little scene by icons at the bottom of the message flickered as person after person opened the images. Aunt Susan, Uncle Mark, Chloe, my parents. One by one, 40 people saw the proof that I wasn't the failing, bitter daughter they'd been whispering about. They saw that I was, in fact, the only person in the family with actual liquid wealth. The silence broke at the 11-minute mark. My mother was the first to type. The Diane Miller is typing. Bubbles stayed up for a long time. Victoria, sweetheart, oh my goodness, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us you had such wonderful news? A fellowship. We are so incredibly proud of our doctor. This changes everything. Then my father, incredible work, Victoria. I knew that degree would pay off eventually. Let's get dinner tomorrow night, just the three of us, to celebrate properly. My treat. The whiplash was nauseating. 10 minutes ago, I was a narcissistic failure who was ruining the family mood. Now I was sweetheart and our doctor. The loyalty I had spent 25 years begging for had finally been granted, and it only cost $162,000. But then, the first defection happened. Aunt Susan, the one who had told me to be the bigger person, replied in the main chat. Wait a minute, Diane. You told us Victoria was having a breakdown and couldn't find a job. You said she was being selfish by not helping with the wedding because she was broke and jealous. But she's been sitting on a fellowship offer while you were skipping her graduation. My mother scrambled. Susan, it's a misunderstanding. I knew about the fellowship all along. I was just giving Victoria space to celebrate her own way. We wanted it to be a surprise for the group. I didn't let her have it. I went into my saved photos and found the screenshot of the text she sent me on graduation day. It's just a piece of paper, don't be jealous. I dropped that into the chat too. You didn't know, I typed. You didn't come to the ceremony. You called my degree a piece of paper and told me I was the family disgrace for wanting you there. You only care about the paper now because it has a dollar sign on it. The chat erupted. Uncle Mark, who had patted my shoulder with pity at brunch, suddenly had questions. Diane, you missed her med school graduation for an engagement party. That's messed up. We all thought she just didn't want us there. Chloe finally chimed in, her text vibrating with desperation. Victoria, please, this is my wedding. Why are you doing this now? If you have that much money, the $10,000 for the venue is nothing to you. Just help me and we can fix this. I'm not a bank, Chloe, I replied. I'm the sturdy one, remember. I'm sure you'll find a way to navigate the world with your sensitive soul. My mother tried one last time to regain control. Victoria Miller, you delete these messages right now. You are embarrassing this family. We have done everything for you. You've done nothing for me, I wrote. You didn't pay for my school. You didn't show up for my graduation. And now you don't get to be part of my life. I'm done playing the foundation for a house that doesn't want me. I didn't wait for the reply. I hit the leave group button. Then I went into my contacts and blocked my mother, my father, and Chloe. The room felt lighter. The air was clearer. I sat on my sofa and watched the sunset through the window. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for permission to exist. I had provided the evidence. I had won the room. And then I had walked out of it. The silence that followed me leaving the group chat was the most expensive thing I've ever owned. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 days, calls from unrecognized numbers, emails from my father's work address, even a LinkedIn message from Chloe, but I didn't open a single one. I had already seen their hearts. I didn't need to read their revisions. The practical fallout was swift. Without my contribution, and with the family chat in shambles, the optics of the high-end wedding collapsed. Aunt Susan and 3 other cousins pulled their funding, citing my mother's disturbing behavior. Chloe didn't get the estate at Oak Ridge. She ended up having a small ceremony in a public park 3 months later. I only know that because I saw a stray photo on a mutual friend's feed. My parents weren't smiling in the background. They looked old. I moved into a new apartment 2 weeks ago. It's a quiet place, 10 minutes from the hospital, with huge windows that let in the morning light. I bought the furniture myself. I hung the curtains myself. There is no sturdy denim here, just soft rugs and a desk where I keep my journals. I've built a new circle. It's smaller, but the foundation is solid. Last night, I had Dr. Eris and a few other residents over for dinner. We didn't talk about family milestones. We talked about a difficult case we closed that morning and a new research paper on cardiac markers. We laughed until our sides ached over a burnt batch of brownies. There was no one at the table waiting for me to fail so they could feel superior. Before they left, Dr. Eris stopped by the door. She looked at the wall in my entryway and smiled. I had finally framed my medical degree. I didn't hide it in the back of a closet or treat it like a weapon. I hung it right where the sun hits it at 4:00 p.m. every afternoon. It's perfectly straight. It isn't just a piece of paper, it's the receipt for my freedom. I'm Victoria Miller, MD. I'm 25 years old. And for the first time in my life, I don't have to prove I belong in the room. I own the room. Would you have paid the $500 to keep the peace, or would you have dropped the paycheck in the chat? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this story spoke to you, make sure to like and subscribe for more. There's another story in the description about a woman who discovered her husband's secret second family at his retirement dinner. You won't want to miss that one either.